I am torn on how to feel about NHK. If you've heard about this series, you know it gets overwhelming praise, but it wasn't a masterpiece for me. I wasn't in love with it. In fact, I almost stopped after episode 3 because I was not enjoying it. But due to the series being heralded as a classic, I wanted to see the whole picture, so I watched all of NHK. And let me say, the series did improve since those initial first 3 episodes, but I would say that the majority of the show felt mediocre. It didn't impact me that much. It felt okay. In addition, there were a lot of weird, off-putting, and uncomfortable moments. So why am I not saying that I hate this series or that it sucks? Well, because of the ending. Although I didn't love the series wholeheartedly, I did enjoy the ending. It felt like it was mature, understood how the world works, and what it feels like to come to terms with working to survive. A lot of the series had been slapstick, been full of too many anime tropes to count, and had a heavy focus on degen humor. It didn't feel that mature. Then, randomly, the series would hit you with emotional moments. Sometimes they didn't land perfectly, but they always felt unique and fresh. The midpoint of the series with the offline meeting had a resolution that felt strange. It didn't feel good, it didn't feel bad, just real. This was something that could happen to actual people. I wasn't in love with it, but I wasn't expecting it to be so purposely unsatisfying, making me so unsure about the state of our characters and the events that just transpired. It felt different, not perfect, but unique. I was unsure if this uniqueness was fully good, but it was strong enough of a feeling to keep me watching. Now, taking away my opinion, objectively, what is the series trying to say? I can personally not enjoy something, but can still see the merit in it. I can still understand what the series is going for and draw meaning. So, let's talk about it. Welcome to the NHK is about degeneracy, self-sabotage, and coping with living in the real world. You can see the impact the series has had, not only on the fans, but also the anime industry as a whole. You can tell that this heavily influenced Steins Gate. With all of the conspiracy talk, being an introvert, and the underlying line of degeneracy in Steins Gate, it feels a lot like NHK. I understand why it resonates with people in certain aspects. If you enjoy NHK, you've had moments like Sato, when you're overwhelmed with the real world, where you run. But Sato is portrayed as an idiot, as a bad person, so the story is telling you that you will make mistakes like him, but it's not necessarily a good thing. Whether you see yourself in Sato, it is a wake-up call. You don't want to be like him, but we have all been him in some sense and some degree at some point in our lives. The overly messy room, the depressed outlook on life, struggling to find friendships, relationships, or meaning in general. These are all things that I love in media and all things that NHK covers. So, it should be something that I love, but I just don't. For as important as all these themes are for the series, they only feel like a third of it. So much of it is loud, slapstick humor with generic anime tropes that feels really weak. There is also such a heavy focus on degeneracy. Some parts felt like they were crossing a line into problematic as well, which was hard to watch. Now, from an objective narrative standpoint, this makes sense. You aren't supposed to like when Sato is acting this way. You aren't supposed to love his character. He is acting as the mistake. And he learns along the way to not be this way. Good. That is a well-written character arc. But you can understand this and still not enjoy the way it was executed. When you make your characters caution signs to the viewer, it is natural that they will be less invested in them. It is hard because sometimes these characters are relatable, but others they are so far in the opposite direction that I found myself really not enjoying it. But, leaning back to the meaning of the show, I wanted to talk about the finale. The reason I decided to talk about NHK was because of the finale. I am not talking about Misaki trying to commit suicide or Sato trying to save her. That part felt basic. I am talking about when Sato gets his allowance fully cut and has to reassess his life completely. This felt real. This felt mature. This was amazing. This is the strength of NHK. I have, as everyone has, once wished that I never had to work. That there could be some loophole to get out of it. That it wasn't fair that life had to be so boring and unhappy. But there's no escaping it. You have to work to live. Simple as that. It's not a fun or nice realization, but starving to death or being without a place to sleep isn't either. Sato comes to terms with this, that he won't get to be a hikikomori anymore. This was powerful. The entire series, he had tried to get himself to stop being a hikikomori, to stop being a loser, and he failed. It was only until he was forced to change that he actually did. This hit me so hard. There are so many times where I wanted to change things about myself, but I'm either too lazy or not committed enough to do so. I learn best when I'm forced to do something, when I can't quit, just like Sato does. This hit really hard and deep, and I enjoyed how nonchalantly the series states this life-altering message. It quietly and slowly shows Sato starving during the last few minutes of the final episode. It's not exaggerated, not loud, just real. He doesn't want to work, but he doesn't want to die, so he works. Simple. Then he states that being a hikikomori was a luxury. It was something that he took for granted. Now, obviously, the series is not trying to say to aim to be a hikikomori as your end goal. It is not saying it's good, it's so clearly against that. It is saying that you won't appreciate things until they're gone, and that things in life could be much worse. It is about appreciation and understanding what the real world is like. Living rent-free, work-free is a dream, not a conspiracy. Sato does not get to live that way anymore. He has to live like everybody else, working to survive. NHK doesn't end on a happy ending and doesn't end on a sad ending. It's in between. Once again, it feels real. Sato is no longer a hikikomori, but it's not by his choice, only due to circumstance. He's not magically happy, and Yamazaki is gone for good. Hitomi doesn't love him and is also loving her own life without him. Misaki is still here spending time with him, but they aren't super in love either. That's another thing that I love about this series. At the beginning of the series, NHK is extremely horny. This is not inherently bad, but as the series goes on, it begins to pull away from this. He starts to see Misaki less as a sex object and more as a companion and friend, and later down the line, someone he has feelings for. He denies Hitomi's offer to sleep with him, which he never would have done at the start. Even Yamazaki focuses on growing up and maturing. This is another part of the series that I loved. The majority of NHK is predictable, which I didn't enjoy. Sato's online girlfriend being Yamazaki, Misaki trying to kill herself after talking about all the famous people who wrote suicide notes, Sato being saved by the fence when trying to save Misaki by sacrificing himself. I don't like these things, but I did like how there were multiple moments that surprised me. I loved and was surprised by the fact that their game flopped and they simply gave it up, that they were realistic and aware enough to do so, that the story was real enough to say that two dudes trying to create a game all on their own would fail. Allowing Yamazaki to leave and stay gone was also very powerful and once again realistic. I was ready over and over for Yamazaki to come back, but he never did. People will disappear from your life due to circumstances that you can't control. It's not what you want, but it does happen. Just like failing at your dream to become a game designer. It was also very nice how they left the relationship between Sato and Misaki much more about companionship than sex or even head over heels love. It was much more restrained and calm. Them falling in love took time. This ending felt mature, where they're both struggling but doing what they have to and spending time together because they enjoy and value the other person. They're comfortable around one another and not nervous all the time, and they're not making constant sexual advances. They're just companions that care for and appreciate one another. It's very wholesome and not how I suspected the series would turn towards the end, given how it started. That's another huge focus of the show, how realistic certain moments and characters are. But what makes it even weirder is how contradictory and untrue that statement is 90% of the time. So many characters are essentially caricatures with exaggerated loud voices and weird decisions and hyperly degenerate lifestyles. They feel stupid and slapstick the majority of the time. They feel like tropes themselves. They feel mostly one note. Then the series will come around and hit you with a super relatable line, or you see a character act in a way that someone you know in real life has. NHK is weird. Weird because I both dislike and like the series at the same time. It's hard to pin down. It feels so generic and weak sometimes, and so unique and powerful in others. I know people like Hitomi. I've met people in real life exactly like her, where they are happy enough with their partner not to break up with them, but unhappy enough to seek attention and validation from others. She represents self-destruction and doubt, always thinking about the other choice and if it would have been better. She isn't happy with herself or her own life, so she looks toward others and their happiness. It is so self-destructive and dangerous to one's happiness. This is another aspect of NHK that felt so absolutely genuine and real, but was sandwiched into a show which the majority of the times feels cartoonish, exaggerated, and fake. NHK truly is unique but not perfect. But once again, I'm still talking about it. The day after I finished watching the series, when I was at work, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Picturing the ending with Sato plugging away at his 9-to-5 as I did the same, not being entirely content, but doing what was needed to be done. I noticed myself thinking about the show when I would get anxious in social situations. I would catch myself and say, hey, don't be like Sato, and it would make me less nervous. There were benefits to watching the series, to me personally, even though I didn't love it all. It feels like something that is good to experience, something you can take messages and meaning away from no matter what. Which once again is so confusing for me because the majority of the series feels shallow, lukewarm, and just okay. But I can't stop thinking about the ending and the moments that continue to resonate with and impact my life. Overall, I would say that I am happy that I've watched NHK, just to experience those unique moments. The show is not perfect. There's going to be lots of times where you roll your eyes at the ridiculous decisions of its characters, times when you see a plot twist coming, but in those special moments where the series excels, you are going to come away with new meaning to carry with you, with a newfound motivation, with a deeper understanding of yourself and how the world works. You truly will be welcomed to the NHK.